Is the Canadian dream still real? What I mean by that is Canada still the land where there's lots of opportunity, it's friendly, it's safe, and it's where everybody wants to be other than America? So I'm a person that moved to Canada in 2007. I'm an immigrant. I'm also a minority in this country because I'm African or I'm Black. So I feel like I have a unique perspective to share on what it's like living in Canada compared to what it was before. So I moved to this country in 2007 from Zambia, a country in Africa, and we came as a family here and we settled and I went to school and university in this country, and I've also worked over the last few years in this country as well. So I've also had the chance to live in other countries such as South Korea and Singapore. And so I wanted to share my thoughts on the state of Canada right now and what it was prior. So when I was growing up in this country, it was a lot safer, a lot cheaper. I remember $5 footlongs. I remember dollar value menus at McDonald's. I remember, just having a few coins in my pocket and I could go buy a slice of pizza or I could go buy whatever snacks I wanted from Dollarama. When everything in Dollarama is our dollar store equivalent in Canada. When I could go to the dollar store and buy things for less than a dollar, and everything costs less than a dollar in the store. It doesn't now anymore. But these were the days. And I understand that inflation is a thing around the world. It's not just happening in Canada, but those days are long gone. They're long gone. And so today, if I were to look at the real GDP per capita of what Canada is today compared to what it was, it hasn't been much changed over the last decade or so. This means that the output for every individual in Canada, in terms of the goods and services that they produce, has stayed the same. If you compare it to other developed countries, they've been growing, year over year, and Canada's kind of stagnated from that perspective. Canada is a country that is very big on immigration. So as the years have gone by, our population has grown. So I think we're sitting at about 40 million people in the country. And this is quite small for the size of Canada, because if you compare ourselves to the USA is slightly smaller in size compared to Canada, but they have almost 10 times the population that we have. So why is that? Why is Canada's population so low? Is because, most of the people live close to the US border. So all the major cities, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, all of those, Regina, they're all close to the US border. So about 70% of Canadians live close to the US border because the climate is warmer and not many Canadians want to live, in the northern parts of Canada because it's more remote and less opportunities in terms of work. So when many people migrate to Canada, they tend to settle these areas that I mentioned before, and that means there's more competition in terms of work. There's more, more supply, I should say, for workers looking for jobs in the country. Um, and another thing too is the cost of living has also gone up. So if you want to own a home or if you want to rent a home, because there's more people looking for homes in Canada, then the prices will go up. So the cost of living has gone up. And I know this is not just a Canada problem. This is something that's happening in many other developed countries in the world. But Canada is unique in terms of the scale of how this has happened in our nation. So if you compare Canada's housing prices compared to other housing prices in other nations, like if you look at France, USA, Australia, you would notice that the Canadian market has been a lot different compared to those other countries. So young people in this country are struggling to, buy houses. They can't buy a house. It's very rare that people buy a house on their own. It has to be a dual income decision. So you and your wife, your husband, have to put your money together after you've saved for a number of years and then put it together to buy a home. Um, and yeah, it's extremely tough for the youth. And so salaries haven't been increasing at the same rate that the cost of living has increased in the country as well. So people are not saving as much money as they used to. And so it's gotten a little tough for especially immigrants coming into this country. So if you're coming from a country where the cost of living was much lower, and then you come here and then you realize, like, man, it's quite expensive to live in this country. Yeah, so the times are getting a little bit tough. So that's the state of Canada from an immigration perspective. And so safety, it is still quite safe, but there has been a general increase in crime rates that's been happening in this country. So This is though things like, theft that have been increasing, robberies also, violent crimes have also been on the rise. It is still a safe place for me if I want to go outside with my friends and, hang out. You're like, I don't feel scared to like walk around at night in many cities in Canada. It's still quite safe, but these are some of the dangers that are lurking and that are increasing. Also, drug use is also becoming, more frequent. As many of you know, in Canada, cannabis is legal. I'm not saying that just because Canada is that just because it's legal in Canada, then other drug usage rates will go up. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it is something that you need to not consider, but know about in terms of the use of certain drugs in this country. So it's legal. People can smoke it in public, obviously within smoking areas. And it's just something that some people that are coming into Canada need to be aware about, because I know in some countries, especially Asian countries, they are very against that type of stuff. And so that is something that you need to consider, especially if you're raising a family, that they will be exposed to these types of things in society. And so in terms of other opportunities, economic opportunities, Canadians don't get paid the same amount for the same job compared to people in the US. So you could be doing the exact same job in Canada and get a salary, which is, decent. But if you're going to be working in America or in Singapore, you're going to be making a lot more money for the exact same job that you're doing. And because of tax rates in Canada, it's one of the more highly taxed countries, in the highly taxed developed nations, because we have free healthcare, we have a lot of government services, which is a good thing. But in terms of your take home pay, it's going to be less compared to what you could be making in other countries. And so I obviously love this country. I'm a Canadian citizen. It's about a lot of good things for my family and a lot of good things for me. Having this Canadian passport has given me access to many countries around the world where I can travel, where I don't need a visa. It's given me opportunities to work abroad. And so I'm definitely not hating on Canada at all. I think it's a wonderful country. And like I said, I'm an immigrant to this country and it gave me a lot of opportunity. In terms of racism, it's not as prevalent, you know. I mean, I've had my fair share of bad things and that have been said and done to me, so I'm not saying it's non-existent, but it's definitely a multicultural society. So Canada is a place where we have people from all over the world, India, Italy, Europe, Africa, South America. We all come here and we all, appreciate everybody's culture, and we try to understand each other and give everybody, a chance to make it in Canada. But we do have our fair share of, people that will say some things and, will hate on you just because of how you look or or what God you believe in and stuff like that. But those people are in the minority. Now, what are my thoughts on Canada today? I do think that the country is, especially during the last decade. So, our prime minister, or our former prime minister, Justin Trudeau, received a lot of flack from a lot of citizens. He was winning elections, which is a little bit strange, but he was extremely unpopular with the Canadians. I know he had a good reputation abroad, but in terms of his reputation in Canada, he would be getting booed when he was making speeches in parliament. He would be getting harassed, not physically, but like, people coming and harassing him verbally, when he would be found in public, and people telling him to resign. And eventually he did resign, but luckily for him, his political party, the Liberal Party, won the most recent election. So we have Mark Carney as our new prime minister. And so Canada's this political party is a Liberal Party, and so they have a very open and free, view or vision for Canada. So this means that if you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, or part of the Pride community, it's a country. Canada is a great country for you. If you are somebody that wants to come to Canada and you want to be an immigrant, they are very pro immigration. But lately, because of a lot of pushback and a lot of people complaining about a lot of things when it comes to political issues, the government is stepping back a little bit when it comes to certain ideas that they envision for Canada. So it may be a little bit hard, especially if you're an immigrant coming into this country. The walls or the barriers to entry have maybe increased a little bit, but it's not impossible. So I also believe that Canada is still one of the greatest countries in the world. A lot of people still dream of coming here. There's afraid of moving to America just because of, the violence, the crime that happens. Yes, America has a lot of opportunity, but it also has a lot of baggage that it carries with it. This is just my personal opinion. I believe the racism in America is worse, and I also believe the crime rates in America are worse. Just personal opinion. And I do also believe that Canadians are friendly. So these are just some things you need to consider if you're thinking about coming to Canada. But if you are a Canadian and you've listened to the stuff that I have to say, what do you think? Am I on the right track in terms of what Canada used to be is not what Canada is today? Do you still feel like Canada is a great country for anybody that wants to come here? Or if you live here in Canada already, do you believe that it's one of the greatest countries in the world, that you don't see any problems with the nation as of right now? So please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be very curious to hear them and I'll respond to you. And I'll see you in the next video. This is Asher. Bye bye.